Hello everyone. Today we are going to go through the answer to this question, this kind of involved question. There's a lot of big numbers and big words here. So I'm going to start by reading through this and then we'll figure out a way to solve it. So the question is, if a zeptomole of xenon contains 131.29 zeptograms and there are 602 xenon atoms in a zeptomole of xenon, how many xenon atoms are there if there are 450 zeptograms of xenon? Okay, so there's a lot of information here. It's a little bit of a tongue twister and a lot of big words and a lot of numbers. Now there's some good news here. The good news is you know everything you need to solve this problem. We don't need to know what a zeptomole or a zeptogram is in order to solve this problem because all of the information we need is provided in the problem if we can map it out in terms of conversion factors. And just kind of a hint, as we go into this course, you are never going to, this problem is actually getting into things like zeptomoles that we aren't ever going to need to know what they mean. But when we do get to points when maybe you don't know some of what is meant in the problem, if you use this process, it will help you get to the solution. So let's go through this. So it says if a zeptomole of xenon contains 131.29 grams. So let's go ahead and write that as a conversion factor. So what we're going to do, we're just going to make a little table down here, and we'll say I'm going to write z-mole for zeptomole just to abbreviate that. There's not really another way that we could interpret that. So 1 z-mole equals 131.29 Zg for zeptograms. I'm going to actually pause this for a minute. It looks like the lighting is not great, so I'm going to see if I can fix that. Okay, so I went ahead and turned the lamp on there. I think that will show up a little bit better. So let's keep reading. And so the next part is if there are 602 xenon atoms in a zeptomole of xenon. So we're talking about the same information here that we were on the previous part. Again, I'm sorry, I'm going to pause this there. The focus is a little bit off. I'm going to make sure we're in focus. Okay, sorry about that. So let's go ahead and continue. So there are 602 xenon atoms in a zeptomole of xenon. So let's go ahead and write that out. So 602 xenon atoms equals 1 zeptomole of xenon. So I'm going to put 1 z-mole. Just a note, at some point, so I did write xenon here, I didn't write it for the others. At some point that will become important to keep track of that, and we'll talk about that when we get to that point. In this question, we're really just trying to highlight the process of identifying conversions. So then our question, how many xenon atoms? So I'm going to write that as a question. I'm going to write question mark equals xenon atoms. So we know that that's what we're trying to do. So let me start off. How many xenon atoms are there if there are 450 zeptograms of xenon? Okay, so I'm going to write 450 z-grams. So that's our information. We have this equality, we have this equality, we have this question, and we have this kind of a statement of a number. Now one thing that we always have to ask ourselves as we start this sort of a question is, where do we start? We have a lot of information. What do we start with? And usually the best answer to that is you start with a thing you know the least about. And by that I mean we start with a thing that, so we have kind of 4 lines of statements here. We're not going to start with the question because that's what we're trying to find. We're not going to start with this one or this one because these are equalities. We're going to start with this one down here. because this one is just one number. So you start with the thing that has one number, and then you use the other numbers to find the question. So let's start by writing 450 ZG for zeptograms. And then we look at our information up here, and we look for an equality that includes zeptograms, and we see it's right here. Okay, so we're going to use this one first. 1 zeptomole is equal to 131.29 zeptograms. We're using that as our starting point. So what we want to do is we want to write a ratio here. So we kind of write our ratio sign, and then we think to ourselves, where do we want the zeptograms to be? Because we're selecting this because zeptograms is matching the zeptograms in this this measurement. We want the zeptograms to cancel, so whatever we have with zeptograms is going to go on the bottom of this. So we put 131.29 ZG on the bottom. Whatever else we have there, we put on the top. We have 1 ZM, so we put 1 Z mole on the top. So we're, again, setting this up so zeptograms is what we're starting with. We have zeptograms on the bottom, whatever else is on the top. Okay, so now we're ready for our next step. Our next step is deciding. So I went ahead and marked this one. We've used that one. We probably won't need it again. I can actually go ahead and cross through that to show that we have used that already. The next thing we want to do is figure out what do we do with this 1 zeptomole. And we see that we have another equality, and it's the equality is 602 xenon atoms is equal to 1 zeptomole. Is that something we can use? Probably. So we want to do the same thing again here. So think about, maybe just pause the video for a minute. Think about, which do you want to put on top? Which do you want to put on bottom? And the answer is you want the zeptomoles on bottom because you have zeptomoles here. So you want to cancel the zeptomoles out. So we put 1 zeptomole on the bottom, and then whatever else, in this case 602 xenon atoms on the top. So that's how we set that up. So there's, we then, so we've used this one. Maybe we can mark it out. We're not showing any more equalities at this point, and then at this point what we would do is we would ask ourselves, are we getting to the right answer, or do we need more information that is not in the question? And the question is, how many xenon atoms? Well, if we look at our process here, the units we have at the very end are xenon atoms. Those are the units that we're looking for. So we are probably on the right track, assuming that all of our conversions are correct and all of our units cancel out. So let's go ahead and just double check that. So we have zeptograms here. That will cancel with these zeptograms. We have zeptomoles. We'll cancel with these zeptomoles. And we have xenon atoms at the end. The only units we have at the end are the xenon atoms. We want to do this so the units are telling us the answer, and that's basically what we're showing. We're showing the right units. We canceled out the units. We're at the right spot. So at this point, we would go ahead and do the math. So we would take 450 times 602, and then I'm going to go ahead and open a calculator here. So 450 times 602, and then divided by 131.29. So let me go ahead and type that in. So 450 times 602, and then divide by 131.29. There's also the ones. I'm leaving out the ones. We know what happens when you multiply or divide by a 1. And we get this number, 2063.37. Now, there's a few things we could ask about this number. We could think about significant figures. I'm not going to focus on that for now. If we did look at significant figures, we would probably call that 2060. But that's a subject for another lecture. But one thing you do want to think about all these decimal points. do they mean anything? And if we're counting atoms and atoms are discrete units, they don't mean anything. So anytime you're counting atoms, you would never include the decimal points because those don't mean anything. You either have an atom or you don't have an atom. Okay, so we don't have partial atoms when we do this kind of a problem. Again, that's not the main point of this question. The main point is can we correctly do the math to get to the answer. One other thing I'll mention, and then I'll be done. As we get further into this, there will be times when not all of the information you need is given in the question, and you need to know where to go to find that information. So just kind of be aware of that. You basically, what you want to do, you want to start by getting it into this form, maybe realizing when you need to get additional information to get it in this form, and then go through the process of canceling out to get to the right information at the end. That is the end of this particular answer key. Thank you for watching.